Whoa, what up, folks? Dude, I am so pumped to have you here, Dunks. Welcome to the Mikey G and Web3 podcast. How you doing, brother?
Pretty good. I was a little nervous, but you have done a great job at making me comfortable already, and we're just getting going.
Dude, thank you, because that's my job here, is to make you feel incredibly comfortable. There is no reason to be nervous because we're just going to talk as friends. And we're going to have an amazing conversation about life and helping people out and giving the insights, because your journey has been so drastically different than mine and everyone else around the earth. But here's the crazy thing about what we do is, dude, at the end of the day, we all bleed the same red blood. We all have the same depressions, anxieties, thoughts, fears, and you're just going to give your take on it, and you're profoundly going to impact somebody's life. That's what's so exciting about what we're going to do. So, dude, I'm super pumped to have you. Like I said, lighting on point. Your voice is great, and you're dead sexy. You have the trifecta going here, brother. So I'm super excited to have this conversation.
I might be blushing a little bit, but
hey, listen, man, if I can get you to blush, that's another good thing too. We already got people watching. This is going to be fantastic. So I'll do, like I said, a little bit about myself, and then we'll go into kind of the formal introduction, and then we'll get to the podcast question. A little bit about myself. We will be making an announcement next day or two about, I started a space series, Dunks, with my OG hate mod friends, Christian and Mojito. So we were the original, I think, 10 hate mods and hate beast back in 2021. So we started a space series because me begrudgingly, I would love to just do this podcast, but if you really want to grow, you still have to do spaces. So we're doing spaces Tuesdays, 11 a.m. PST is when we do it. We have a cool guest coming on Tuesday. Pretty excited about that conversation. In addition, having many fun conversations. Eugene, this guy is, I don't even know how this happens. I didn't even know this was a thing, but I think he's top 10 or top 15 minds when it comes to the metaverse. And I guess being a thought leader in that space, but they rank metaverse thought leaders. He's coming on Monday. That'll be a beautiful conversation. Diths Gigaverse from Gigaverse, his podcast is dropping this weekend. Also, OG Triple Media, my boy B-Rock, his podcast is dropping this weekend. You can expect multiple shorts coming up, putting into the content cloud. I'm going to work really hard. I want to get to the point where I got 2 to 3 shorts a day. Life is just hectic. It's very difficult to do that. But I have podcast guests literally lined up for the next 4 months if I want to. It's really, how do I balance my podcast versus growth, and spaces is going to be part of that. So I think I'm going to peel back to probably 2 podcasts a week, but that's not going to stop the content. But that is me. That is what's going on. And this is the only time I will talk about myself, except if I have some mind-boggling insight replying to what you say. And that's it. That's where I am. So we like to do formal introductions before we get to the actual question here on the podcast. And so a little bit about my man Dunks. First, got a background in PR. Always been an entrepreneur at heart. Passionate about branding and storytelling. Also a sneakerhead, hence the name Dunks. And founder of Cashew's Get a Job, obviously. But for those who don't know, it's a children's book reimagined as a digital collectible on Soul. Free mint, free books, free 3D files. I actually found Dunks through my other man, Mr. Katz, who has been on this show. He did a link up between us. And after having such an amazing conversation with Mr. Cat, there was no way that I knew Dunks was going to be an awesome human being too. But here's the most exciting part. Dunks doesn't have a middle name. Most people have a middle name. He does not. That's my fun little icebreaker fact about Dunks. Dunks, how did I do, my man?
I think you nailed it.
Nailed it?
Yeah, the fun fact. I hope it was exciting enough. Um,
Listen, not a lot of people don't have a middle name, so I love the fun fact. And it's always just a tidbit, look, a little icebreaker because
right.
there's a lot to get into. Trust me, a
But I
lot.
also want to say much appreciation and love to Mr. Cat, and he's actually the one that created our 3D files for Cashew. Good job.
Yes, I forgot that he did that too. Dude's just good-hearted guy like yourself. I mean, through our intro call, I always, like I said, I always have intro calls to vet every guest because my format is a little deeper than most podcasts, and so it's not a fit for everybody. It was like, well, one, you already had the approval of Mr. Katz, and then 2 sentences in, I was like, Dunks and I are we're gonna ham it up. It was gonna be an amazing conversation. So to get to that conversation, we are here, man. The world famous Mikey G and Web3 podcast question: how'd you get the seat you're sitting in today, Dunks? Please give me episode 1, 2, and 3. To reiterate for the audience that is here right now that has never heard this podcast format, or for people to listen to it in the future, episode 1 is your childhood. Like I said, that's a pretty big question. Let's start with whatever parental figure, parents or your parental figures, kind of mantras that you were taught that you still think about today that help fundamentally form you as a human being. Vivid memories. Were you a tinkerer? Did you play sports? And then episode 2, we will be schooling, and then your professional career, entrepreneurship. Failures is what I'm interested in. Failures and insights learned on how you grew, learn, and continue to grow. Episode 3, how you found Web3. Very short TLDR of how you found episode 3, how you found Web3, what you're currently doing. You obviously have launched a book on Solana and what the future looks like. So with all of that being said, brother, hit me up with episode 1, anywhere you want to start.
Anywhere to start. Well, I was not much of a sports player.
Okay.
I was more into the extreme sports, skateboarding, snowboarding, paintball, if that counts.
Oh, paintball. But you just said you weren't a sports player, and then you just ripped off a bunch of sports.
Well, I wasn't like a team sports player.
Right. Okay. I get it. So paintball, dude, I played. You remember? I'll see if you remember this. I'm definitely older than you are. Got gray in my beard. I just realized, like, holy shit, that's a lot more gray in my beard than I thought there was. A spider. Do you remember the spider paintball guns? That was my jam.
I do, and I don't remember them being top of the line.
They weren't. I was poor. Like growing up, I didn't have a ton of money.
Tippmann 98 was the bottom. Tippmann 98 was
Tippmans were bad. Spider were a little better than Tippmann, but I do remember those too. And then there was, what was the full auto one? There was a full auto one.
I believe there was the Rat Impulse and there were the Shockers, which were secretly the same company, I think.
Shockers. That's the one I'm thinking of. Okay, so paintball and extreme sports. I'm actually not surprised by that because, you know, I'm interested. Skating. I love your insight on this. We're already here. Skateboarding seems to be a big culture for a lot of creative people. And if you agree or disagree with that, I would love to know why. Because skateboarding or snowboarding or more of these extreme sports. Any thoughts there?
I'm going to go on a whole tangent here because
yes, I love tangents.
My skateboarding got me into sneakers. Mm-hmm. And most of the people I know that are sneakerheads have a very different story than me. Okay. And a lot of people that were into skating when I was kind of rebelled against the things I was into. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of watched it adapt and change. And I didn't quite align with the culture, I'd say. You know, back in 2005, Nike SB came out. And, you know, I'm in high school and I'm the only person I know skating in Nike SB. It wasn't a cool thing to do back then. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, as time goes by, Nike SB blows up, and it's the cool thing to do.
Yeah. What do you think? What was this just like your natural inhibition to like almost like trend setting in a say, or were you just like really deeply interested in new things that were coming out in those cultures, or you were looking at things at a broad perspective?
I mean, another tangent, but my mom's from Paris, so we used to travel a lot.
Yeah.
She would always take me to this concept store called Colette.
Okay.
and their clothes are not around, but I would see all these clothing and displays, and I'd always get these limited edition Dunks or Jordans. My favorite shoes were Dunks and Jordans.
Yeah.
And I'd bring them back home and no one really gave a shit. Now they're like coveted items, but
Yeah.
I just had exposure to all these shoes, and like, yeah, I love the culture, but I fell in love with Dunks, and that's kind of where the nickname started.
Interesting. So talk to me a little bit about that though. So you're saying your mom's from Paris. I'm assuming you're traveling a lot more than a typical person at a younger age. Do you have any thoughts on how that impacted you?
Um, I had a great childhood, and my parents were able to provide a lot of opportunities and experiences for me. And when I say I did a lot of traveling, I did, but it would be more so like me and my mom going to Paris every year. Um,
Right, right. And but so the family was there though, right?
some more so friends than anything.
Okay. And did you like reflecting back now? I know not at the time that you're traveling, you're young, you're just soaking up. Reflecting back now, differences in cultures or any thoughts or insights there from those traveling, or is it more just fond memories that you think about?
Fond memories, but I remember around the time um, I was in middle school, we had the whole like freedom fries and French fries, and all of a sudden there was like a couple of years in middle school. Like when I was growing up, it was cool,
Yeah.
and then for a few years, it was not at all. And I got a hard time here and there about um, just background.
Interesting. So you actually started by like a younger age understanding that like there was just this perception of where you were from and that could be an impact on it.
Well,
That
let me give you a perfect example.
love.
I was very young, but in Paris, I had learned what a transgender was in the early '90s, right?
Right.
But that's not something that was openly accepted or commonly talked about here for quite a while after.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And so these melds of culture, I think brings me to the next question. I talk about this every episode, which is creativity, right? And creativity comes in so many forms for so many different people, and how they find it. And one of the ways is exposure to different things, to different mindsets. Talk to me a little bit about how these differences have started at this younger age and reflecting back impacted your creative mindset.
That's an interesting question because growing up, I didn't identify as a creative. So
Mm,
it's funny because you know my mom's like a stereotypical foreign artsy person. You walk
yeah,
into her house and it's almost like an art gallery, and she has
yeah,
all sorts of too many pictures on the walls. That's what I'd say.
right,
But I didn't identify as a creative, and my dad kind of raised me to be more business oriented and focus on that stuff.
right,
And it wasn't until many years later I had this midlife crisis where it wasn't that bad though, because my midlife crisis was, what if I am a creative?
yeah.
And it kind of the aha moment was designing business cards. It was
Ah, and so what do you think like creativity means to you, or how you like obviously you had this like you said, this midlife crisis or this impactful moment where you maybe started being curious about being creative. But in essence, what does creativity mean to you? Because I always use the example of a lot of people think, oh, creativity is somebody that can draw or paint well. And actually think that's a skill set, right? So for you, when you think about creativity as a whole, how do you describe it? How do you feel about it?
I used to think similar to what you said. I used to think being creative meant you were an artist of a certain skill.
Hmm.
Now I think it's being able to constantly learn and evolve and adapt and take that experience and represent it and kind of make it blend all together.
Yeah. And so looking back more at this childhood area, then are there any things kind of reflecting, thinking to myself, oh, maybe this was my kind of creative juices working, even though I didn't think about it that way. And if not, that's totally fine. I think this is a fascinating topic.
When I was young, sometimes parents read you bedtime stories.
Yeah.
My mom would just make them up off the top of her head. And they'd always be about our family dog. His name was Kenfield. And, I don't remember a specific story of significance, just,
Yeah.
a little fun story about our dog. And, now flash forward, I have this book, Cashew Gets a Job, and it's a fun little story about a dog, and it's more focused on a positive message. But
Right.
I could tell, the seeds were planted earlier. I definitely got inspiration from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my mom's much more talented than me. She can draw, and she's not the illustrator, but when this project first got going, she was doing the initial sketches.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Dude, isn't it funny how life works out though? Because this is what's cool about what we do here. Like, you as a founder and so busy all the time, like you get a chance to reflect on that. And there's so many things that happened in my youth as well too, that I just didn't really realize was profoundly impacting me, like video games, right? Like, I didn't realize that video games actually really helped out with my creativity. As bad as a rap they got for my generation of like, oh, they're rotting your brain, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it gave me exposure to so many different art styles, and even dialogue, like in Final Fantasies was could be complex at times, and you were dealing with emotions. Like, I think all of these things have profound impacts on you when you're little. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, actually, I don't know if this is still childhood, but
Ah, it's all good.
you're talking about video games and the impact, and I feel like I missed a big chunk of that. When I was 16, unfortunately, my house got broken into.
Oh,
They took a lot of stuff, but what hit me the hardest was the PlayStation, the Xbox, and all my video games. And they found who did it, and it was like, fill out a form, you'll get your stuff back. And the punishment for my parents was like, no, you don't get your stuff back, and you learn to hang out with better people.
oh, but
I
what?
don't know if I like that lesson, but I didn't really have video games again. And then I went to college, and other kids were all into Halo, and I'd play here and there, but it was never like me with my set. And
Yeah, but no, but still, that's just like again, your journey totally different, and that's just such an interesting insight. So thank you for sharing that with me. And one of the things that you kind of alluded to there were kind of mantras and lessons. Like, if you look back from mom and dad, and what were things that you think they instilled in your mind, or kind of were not stringent on, but really kind of you hold close, near and dear today?
My mom taught me the more warm and loving lessons, and
Mhm.
believing in yourself and doing what's right,
Yeah.
taking other people's thoughts into consideration. And um,
Yeah.
just really, she's pretty much my Cashew's biggest fan, biggest cheerleader. And she's always believed in this project, and doesn't even fully comprehend all the aspects of Web3.
Right.
I can show her this pot. Her birthday is Sunday, by the way, turning
Nice.
77. So it's a big deal for me to say, hey, this little thing that started as a joke, we have a book, we have a podcast, people are listening, we have an international community trading NFTs or whatever I got to call them,
Yeah.
for digital collectibles. She
Yeah.
understands that better than
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. That, dude, incredible. And so you obviously had business sense. So going back more into like the subjects, like, did you like school? Did you hate school? What were these kind of subjects that you were starting to delve into? What was passionate, or you started to pique
Uh,
your interest at that time?
I love school, always have. I was that kid that would be sick and fake not being sick to still go.
Really? You are
Yeah,
one of the few people that have been on this podcast to say that. What do you think
I
that is? Why is that?
college is a different story, but the here in Michigan, the education system, it wasn't like too challenging for me.
Mhm.
And it was, social time. I got to see friends.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, I had a great time in elementary school. Middle school was still a great time, but a little bit more awkward,
Yeah, for
uh,
sure. For sure.
and then high school was a great time, minus a few little, mishaps, but
A few little mishaps. What were you in? I mean, were you a reader? Were you a math guy? Like, what did that look like?
I guess more of a reader. I mean, writing was probably my favorite class.
Yeah.
Math was probably my worst class.
Mhm. Mhm.
Science, I didn't like it, but if you have a goofy teacher and you're just kind of messing around with your friends, you make the best of it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
My favorite class that stands out to me was in high school we had a retail management class, and basically our high school had, during lunch we had a little, not where you buy the meals, but we had a little snack shop, and the kids
Uh,
do, looking back, it wasn't too realistic, but the kids do stocking,
right.
inventory, budgeting, and instantly they made me manager, and it was just a fun
Yes.
time. So
Yes. And so here's what we're doing, man, which is this is kind of boom, a little insight into the entrepreneurship stuff because you even mentioned that in kind of like what you're interested in ingrained in. Uh Obviously again, reflecting back, you didn't know it at the time, but as we're kind of transitioning here to more of episode 2, talk to me about when you're in these more formative years in high school, where you feel like your passions are starting to move.
everywhere, and there's all these things I wanted to do, and at the time I thought I had resources to do them.
Mm,
I was also in a position where, yeah, someone in my family owned a store and I was interested in retail, right?
mm,
But my dad had a real estate business which was doing well at a time, and I was kind of under the impression, go to a college we approve of,
yeah.
get a 4-year degree, and you're going to have more or less a business to run or to take over.
Mm,
And as I went to college, as I graduated, 2007 recession hit, it all changed so fast.
oh,
So not playing the victim card, but all of a sudden, I knew I was going to college either way, but all of a sudden I need a real career path that I didn't really take too seriously before.
right, right.
So I'm like, I like school store, let's do retail management. And I actually got my bachelor's degree in retailing.
In retailing, I didn't even know that existed as a thing.
Yeah, it's
And
not a very lucrative degree to have.
so, yeah, yeah. I think, I hear this a lot too, which is if you don't if you don't utilize the networks that you're gaining in college, you're wasting a lot of that tuition. Uh,
I mean, I was a good student, but I did stupid things like I faked an internship. And it's like looking back, I had to pay for those credits and I didn't really learn anything in the process, you
right,
know.
right.
Little things in retrospect, I wish I did a real internship.
100%. But at the time,
At
what
the
are the
time I was
motivations for faking an internship? So you can hang out with your friends and do less work, right?
well, I mean, I was already taking heavy credit loads.
Gotcha.
I was
So,
trying to get ahead, and
yeah,
I guess the moral is I regret cutting corners at times.
beautiful, beautiful insight. Because I think this comes up very many times in this
You
podcast,
know,
which is, and it happens in this space all the time, right? And
on
this
that
is,
note,
go ahead.
the retail program was one class away from the packaging program, organic chemistry. And at the time I just could not motivate myself to take organic chemistry. And I think a part of me thinks, well, if I went packaging, there would have been a lot more opportunity, a lot more career paths.
Hmm.
MSU happens to be the number one packaging school in America, but the journey I was on eventually led me to Web3, and this technology didn't exist when I graduated.
Right, right.
So I genuinely believe this is all for a reason, and I'm at peace with everything. It just took a long time to have that mindset.
Yeah, and I know this is fast forwarding, but I can't not ask that question, which is, and I have many ways I think about this, but you said something really important, and that I think you could really profoundly and help impact somebody, which is finding this peace, right? And maybe your version of it is just accepting that this is the path that you are on, and not getting upset or having regrets because you didn't do X, Y, and Z, and you're just good with it. What is coming to peace with things mean for you, or how do you think you started to get to that?
I do believe time heals everything. That
Mm,
it's different for everyone, but there are steps you can take. And I started seeing a therapist.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
not at once upon a time. That's not something I would have considered.
right,
Now it's something I'd recommend.
yeah, uh,
And I've learned things like, some people wake up happy, right?
yeah,
Maybe some days I have to try a little harder or
right.
fight to be happy. But then I sit down and say, what am I grateful for today? Right.
Mm,
And I'll give you an example. Today, I'm grateful for connecting with you and being on this show. I'm
oh,
grateful for right after this, we have me and Mr. Cat actually have a featured quest on Nifty Island, which is
yeah,
more rewarding than you think because I'm getting to relive those video game moments that were taken from me when I was younger. Now I get to play as Cashew in Nifty Island with friends, and I'm nerding out, and I'm 36 playing like I'm 16 probably.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And but also what you said without saying it, and this is what, whether it be mental health or whether it be any other aspect in life, even spirituality, right? Or physical health, you have to work at it, right? Like you have to be determined that day in and day out, and you might not do it every day, but you cannot give up. And it's all work. I think so many times people just think things magically happen for people, and that they, like, they lucked out or they're so lucky. And it's like, nah. Like, yes, there are people that are born with a silver spoon and they don't have to work hard. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about majority of the time when people acquire things, they have worked very hard at it. Any thoughts around this topic?
I I think I'm a very lucky person, and I also work very hard, but I genuinely believe that you can speak things into existence, or
Mhm.
that if you believe it'll happen, you can make it happen. So, like, when someone says you're lucky, to me, it just means that person might believe in themselves more,
Yeah,
and they have more drive to see their vision through.
yeah, yeah,
Now, it's
yeah. Or
unfortunate, I write a book and there's a lot of things I've done, and colleagues, friends, acquaintances, enemies, whatever you want to call them, that, oh, he can do it, I can do it, it looks so easy, right?
yeah,
Oh, and it gets insulting, but then they try it and realize maybe I wasn't so lucky.
yeah, yeah. Oh, and another version of that is, I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs, and it's been interesting to see this, like, let's say 20 years ago, it's like, you're not sharing an idea about a new business because somebody's going to take that idea. Where now finally the realization is here is like, share as much as you want, because 0.000.1% of the population actually has the ambition to go do it, right?
And I couldn't agree more, and I'm glad I started this project in my 30s, because in my 20s, I might have been focused on other things or not had these life lessons to maneuver, the way that I do.
Right. 100%. Absolutely. Listen, man, I'm going to take this moment to break. Like I said, like, retweet, do all of the things, people, because Dunks has already dropped many life bombs here. And we've got people watching and chiming in that are already excited about watching the podcast. But I think, is there anything as we're transitioning here into episode 2, when you reflect on this? And by the way, you see what we're doing here? I'm getting to know you a little bit here. You've given us many really cool insights. We talked about creativity. We talked about you traveling. Where I'm fundamentally getting to know who you are as a human being. Anything else that you kind of want to share from that episode 1? Or are you good to transition into episode 2 here?
Uh, I would just emphasize that I was very fortunate growing up, and it was a happy story.
Yeah. Yeah, and that brings up one more question that we talk about a lot here. The gravity that is growing up in a household that feels safe and that you feel fortunate, but not being able to like take it for granted, right? Like, what? Talk to me about how important you think that ecosystem is growing up as a young person.
Can you run that by me one more time? Make sure I
It's
fully
just
understand.
like knowing that you're gonna have food on the table every night, knowing that you have a roof over your head. Like, how important do you think that is
Well,
as just
when I was
growing up?
when I was younger, I just thought, I lived in like normal middle class neighborhood, nothing
Right,
special. And like, all we all had like me and all the neighbors had similar stuff, right? All our
right,
parents
yeah,
had like similar cars. I didn't feel special or grateful. I didn't know any better. I just felt like we're all kind of living a similar life.
right, right.
And then in fourth grade, my parents moved to a nicer neighborhood in a much bigger house, and I started buying me nicer things. And all of a sudden, I was, noticed and was grateful, and started kind of realizing, paying more attention to different, socioeconomic structures.
Yeah, and so I think what I'm getting at and things that I've heard because of this is like it's amazing if you have the opportunity to grow up like that because I think it gives you the more it gives you more safety and freedom to explore, be creative, try new things. On the flip side, though, a negative outcome that could come from it is exactly you. You get into this group think arena that like you think this is just what people's lives are, right? This is what everybody experiences, and not till you either get less or get more do you realize like, oh, things are actually drastically different for people, and I think that perspective is key. And at a young age, obviously, it's very difficult to have that. But there are some people that have to get that sooner than later. I've had many people, or not many, but I've had people here that, like, at the age of 8, were in a war torn country and literally, like, had a bag and left. Right. And so that comes with its own set of baggage. But I think what we're doing here is, like I said, is now reflecting back and giving people perspective. It's helping them understand what they do, what they don't have. And even no matter what situation you're in, I love what you just said was it's about reflecting and being what is grateful. Like you said, being on this podcast, the fact that you're going to be able to play games later on today. If you take all of that away and boil it down, it really is that, man. You just have to be thankful and grateful for as hard as it may be at times. Any additional thoughts there?
Um, for some people, it comes more natural or easy, a little bit easier. Sometimes it's a life event, sometimes it's a relationship, sometimes it could be a pet dying, it could be a change in your environment, it could be there's so many things that could uh affect your mental health and set you one way, and there's no like perfect fix for anything. I guess what I'm saying is, to anyone dealing with magic solution, and you kind of gotta, consider getting help or talking to someone, or if you're not comfortable with that, like, you could even talk to Chat GPT as a therapist at this point.
Isn't it crazy?
I haven't done it yet, but I just realized you could do this, and I feel like I'm cheating on my therapist if I do it, but I have to try it.
So I shit you not. I have talked to people that that's actually an amazing application for AI, right? Because you think about these trauma centers or helplines, like a human brain can only handle a lot of this heavy stuff for a certain amount of time. Actually, like a lot of places, it only can work for like 45 minutes, an hour max. AI can have these conversations all damn day long, right? And it's already getting to the point this day and age that they like have thoughtful, meaningful things. And by the way, they're able to analyze thousands of transcripts every day to to sometimes have even more insightful answers than a human might have because they have all these data points and references. Uh, just a super interesting thought. And we could argue all day long on the morality or however we think about that. But yes, absolutely. And I think what we're really trying to say here is and this was my big this was my number one fault. To your point, man, I didn't really come to my like new life realization till my late 30s, man. And that was because I just never dealt with anything and I shoved it all deep down inside. And I'll tell you all right now, that is the worst possible thing to do, especially for a 30 plus year period. You just can't do that because your body and mind will break eventually. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And there's things that have happened to me that I wasn't comfortable speaking about for 10 years or so, and now I'm kind of an open book.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
sometimes it's too much for people, sometimes it makes people feel better.
Yeah.
As long as you reach one person, like, okay, let people think what they want,
100%, man. And so this is a perfect break. Dude, unbelievable conversation already. We could like start winding it down and I'd be happy with the insights, but we got so much more to go, man. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to episode 2. And in episode 2, like I was saying, we're really getting into kind of the college years and, the skill sets and jobs. And even if it's a crap job that you don't want to talk about, we don't have to talk about the job, but these aha moments. I know one of the big one came with COVID and Cashew, obviously, but take us through a couple moments before we get to this like culmination of what inevitably starts your Web3 journey.
So I'm at college and, my whole life I kind of just thought I'd be in real estate. And now I know maybe that's not my path or things are changing and I'm considering retail. And, there's a lot going on and, I'm going through it. So I'm partying a little bit more than I should. I'm not taking academics as seriously. My grades are slipping, right? But, around this time, medical marijuana becomes a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's controversial, but pretty much everything I do is. And I'm a student and I have a lot of friends that are doing illegal things, but they're making money. And I'm just kind of watching on the sidelines going to class. And next thing you know, I was able to legally run a business in the medical marijuana industry. And it's more than just growing weed. I mean, no one knows what they're doing. You can consult, you could build rooms, you could sell seeds, you could sell clones of the plants.
Right.
And you got to cooperate with the laws, but they're changing drastically. And in a college town, it was just a beautiful thing that was able to help me during a dark time.
So again, now we're talking, you see this opportunity and there's a little entrepreneur bug there as well too, right? And so
it almost felt like, hey, things aren't going well. We're going to just kind of bend the laws and give you an opportunity. Don't turn this down. And now everyone I know, I've quit that industry. I'm no longer involved, but everyone I know is opening a dispensary or asking me to get involved with them. And my heart's just not in it.
Right. But at that moment in time, and now reflecting back on that, obviously the perception at that moment in time was this is still bad and a hardcore drug or whatever. Talk to me about the skill sets, insights gained there, because you actually probably went through a lot of business, whether it be branding, marketing, logistics, all of these different things, right?
For the most part, you have patience. And how you acquire them is different state to state. And some people are, legit patients in need. And other states are gray areas that just sign the paperwork and you can sell them this much. Right. Yeah. But then there's always the gray area with what you do with overages. And, maybe you redistribute them. Maybe you make them into hash. Maybe you make them into edibles. But there's just so many things you can do. Yeah. I mean, let's say you don't even want to get your hands dirty. You could just process someone else's stuff and do the extractions.
Right.
I know people who make a full year living just trimming.
That's insane. But for that specific moment in you, what did you take away from going through that that time in that period in your life as more like whether it be a failure, whether it be a major insight or skills gain. I'm
You
interested
know,
in that aspect.
at the time, I thought, my family's going through a hard time. I'm a full-time student, and I found a way to legally make money through a controversial business. I'm proud of myself.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, it's not impressive. I sold a product that was in demand.
Right.
I've had this talk with a lot of people, like resell. I was a reseller selling sneakers. A lot of people who are everyone making money selling Pokemon cards. It's easy to sell something people want. It's hard to create your own IP and demand for that.
Ooh.
So it's like, yeah, at the time I was proud of myself, but now anyone could have done it.
Dude, I love that you bring that up because it's an internal struggle I deal with, right? This space in particular, everyone is interested in the content or KOLs that are going to sell you hype and give you a chance to make money. Not as many people are interested in, which I will, beat this drum till the day I die, what we're doing right here, which are like real skill sets, real life insights to help you level up and just be a better human. And I think that's transferable across every industry, obviously. But it's insanely frustrating to me because I see other people that are doing, I think, far less quality of content or meaningful content, not as meaningful content, getting paid exponentially more.
And on that note, I feel like, at this time, I thought I was a business guy, but I couldn't really explore being a creative because the business was kind of run in the shadows at the time. You didn't really go around bragging or promoting your marijuana business,
Interesting.
Things have changed, but at that time, I'm not creating content and trying to build a community around it.
Yeah, but you also bring up this interesting juxtaposition in the sense that as a business person, you're always trying to find a service or a good that's in demand. You're trying to create product market fit. But the default for how you found it almost created this adverse effect in the sense that it was almost too easy, right? And you felt like, and what I heard you say was, well, I feel like I didn't have to push myself, or maybe I wasn't working as hard because it was just something that people wanted. Did I read that right, or am I off there?
Yeah, it doesn't really take you need motivation to run a business, but I'm not impressed by selling a product in demand.
Yeah.
Like,
this is such an awesome insight in the sense that I've never heard somebody take it from the business perspective to what we're fundamentally breaking down, which is a tried and true mantra. Doing the harder thing, the thing that isn't as easy, ultimately, usually in the long run, helps you exponentially grow, learn, and flourish, right? And so I'm assuming as we continue through this journey, you're going to find some of these points, like Cashew, for instance. We're trying to build and understand how to get something that isn't as easy as to sell as medical marijuana when it's up and coming. So that's just a fascinating insight to me and how you got there. So I appreciate that, man.
yeah, I mean, it comes with negativity too, as friendly and medical as it can be. I've still been beaten up and had guns in my face. You know what I mean? There's certain things that I'm just happy to be in another industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and this goes on to the other theme that comes up a bajillion times on this podcast is it's like you said, and you even said in the beginning, my heart wasn't in it anymore, right? And if you don't have passion, if you don't have fulfillment, and you're just chasing the almighty dollar, like it never ends well in the end, right? Absolutely. Any other thoughts there on that moment in your life?
Just that it kind of hindered other opportunities. Coming out of college, I have all these friends that are eager to take a job for $30,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm making more than that running my own business. I'm not going to apply for these jobs. Well, all of a sudden, when, you know, things change and maybe it's more commoditized and the prices drop, all of a sudden I need to apply for work and I'm lacking any real corporate experience. So I kind of get into this situation where I'm doing a lot of freelance marketing work, and retail, like you said, not the coolest degree. So it kind of evolved into freelance marketing for me. And then that kind of piqued my interest with PR communications. So I applied to graduate school to get my master's in PR. And this time I took school very seriously.
So this is interesting to me, in the sense that there again is this, looking back, you're now stuck in this kind of limbo area where you don't have the resume to compete with the corporate side, but you did
kind of where the cover of my book comes from.
I love it. That totally makes sense, right? And now we're getting the true story behind this, which is, I love that we're doing this. So you don't have the resume, you're caught in this limbo, but you also did gain skill sets from building a business. So looking back, is it, knowing what you know now, still frustrating that you got caught in this kind of limbo because you didn't take the typical path? Or did you have some things that you might not have realized at the time that were super valuable? Any thoughts there?
I gained a lot of skill sets you wouldn't think.
Yeah.
But also it's like, when you ask me what did I learn at MSU, you know, I learned a lot of theoretical stuff, but you don't really have a lot of that is like interaction. Like the curriculum and the programs is almost just busy work. Like, what are the real takeaways? How to deal with people, you know, how to read people, how to read the room, how to make connections, how to network, how to negotiate. And unfortunately, you know, in a college town, there was a lot of overlap with that. So I think the whole experience was extremely worthwhile for me. But yeah, in retrospect, I would have taken a major more seriously. I would have gotten an internship, and I wouldn't have worried about not really having money and trying to run a business, you know?
Right. And so this second go, you said you went back again. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, for graduate school, for the master's program.
So talk to me about what was different on the second go, and kind of insights from this second go round.
Well, this go round, I was much more motivated, much more inspired. I 4-pointed the program. I took away a lot more of the stuff I learned, the concepts, the theories. But you know, then I graduate, and there's not a lot of opportunity still. And then shortly after, we have COVID, and I just find myself doing real estate, kind of like the family business, but my dad's lost his business, and it's just me kind of winging it here because it's kind of what I know, and I'm not really loving it, you know. You know, I still have a few rental properties, and one just got, there was just a drive-by shooting at one of them the other week. It's an awful business to be in, and you know, I'm not a big fan of it. I have landlord tatted right here because I've done it for so long, but you know, it's not where my heart is.
Yeah. And so, but still, I'm still interested in this question. And I don't know, like, maybe you don't have an insight on it. And I think it's almost like, I think what I'm asking is, if you could rewind time, do you, and we already talked about, you think there's a path, but I'm interested in your actual response. Take the fact that everybody has a path out of it. Do you wish you would have gone the more corporate route than tried to be the entrepreneur? Because I'm getting a little bit of vibe of like, I wish I would have maybe just done the resume and done. But yet again, that could be a safer route. What are your thoughts there?
At a time I did. Now, no, I'm perfectly happy with how it all worked out.
That's awesome.
You know, Steve Jobs, I feel everyone knows Steve Jobs, right?
Of course.
And, you know, he gives a speech about, I'm probably going to butcher it, but I'll try and, you know, bullet point it.
Paraphrase it.
He went to college and he basically dropped out, but he continued to go to classes that inspired him. And he learned about calligraphy and and little things like that later inspired the fonts on the keyboard, you know. And it's, you know, whether I enjoyed this or feel I did this right, I learned something at every point that has led to what I'm doing now, you know.
100%.
You
And
know,
I think that's, go ahead.
when I was younger, I wanted to be a clothing designer at one point.
Yeah.
Right now, we're designing 3D clothing for Cashew, and we're going to have a 3D store called Cashew's Closet. You know, I'm getting to do, you know, at one point I thought it would be amazing to be a toy manufacturer, and
Yeah.
I'm not, but we're 3D printing Cashew toys, you know, and all these things I've either learned about or wanted to do or have experience with all play a role in today's project and everything about it.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'm picking up as a theme throughout this really is passion. And you're hinting at it without saying it. I would love your insights on just like how critical passion is to success or moving forward or building a business. And where do your passions at this moment in time ultimately lie?
Passion is the number one driver, I'd say. And at one point, I'd say it was in sneakers and NFTs. And at this point, sneakers is more of a hobby than a passion, and NFTs or Web3, I guess, if we can classify that, is more passion. And it's not just, oh, I like crypto. It's I like the emerging tech. I like the ability to say, okay, I don't just have a company. I have a company that is founded on community art utility, and here's how we deliver all the. I just feel like Web3 just gives you these legs and branches to expand and adapt in ways normal brands can't.
Yes.
I guess I'm passionate about branding is what it comes down to.
100%. But what you said is refreshing in the sense that like the founders that I talk to now are saying that is at this nauseum for years now, and it really hasn't been till recently, which is like, guys, your business is not an NFT. Like Web3 and NFTs and blockchain and community are technologies to enable a thriving business. Exactly what you just said. And again, why we were hinting at earlier, like my brand has become more relevant because we're having meaningful conversations about what entrepreneurs should be thinking about and what are the other things that people should be thinking about to be successful in this space, right? Because the same thing applies, let's say, longevity and doing the right thing over a long period of time. If you were to go on crypto Twitter, people would convince you right now that they made $1 million yesterday in a shit market, which is just not the case, right? And even in a very like bullish market, not as many people as they say they are making as much money as they say they are. And again, it's just doing things the right way. So thank you for sharing that. I think where I want to go next is you talked about the pandemic. Before we get there, again, I'm going to give you the chance to reflect on anything in these moments and times. We've gone through real estate. You went back to grad school. There's this kind of struggle between should I gotten the corporate job or should I have spent the time on my businesses? Any more thoughts there?
You know, without going into detail, I will say that, you know, around that time, I had a lot of friends pass away.
Wow.
Some were drug related, some they took their own life. I had a family member very close to me attempt suicide. Wow. and actually survive it. And just different issues, and it really tests you sometimes. But, you know, around these times, I had gotten some dogs, Icewood and Cashew, and these dogs really kept me going at times. And the book and project is all based off one of these dogs I'm talking about right now.
Yeah. What is it to you? Because I'll tell you something that profoundly impacted me when I was going through my major depressive order, that my therapist, psychiatrist said, what is it about pets that you think are just so darn special?
It's that's a tough one, but like obvious things I can say is if you're going through something and you're not taking care of yourself, like let's say, you're not shaving or eating as regularly as you should be,
Mm-hmm.
you hopefully are still feeding that little animal. And it was kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, the puppy's eating, maybe I should have a meal,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you grow a bond, and you're their parent. You have to take care of them. But for me, I was seeing like really little things, like, oh, the dog needs water and food. Maybe I should,
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I actually love that take because I think most people would go to the like unconditional love is amazing. That's what they have for you, right? But then you went to this like pretty primal state of, well, this thing needs to live. And as you're keeping it alive, you realize, I probably should do the same things for me as well, which is a really super interesting take.
You know what? 21 and 31 were the darkest years of my life, but 21 I thought was really, really bad. And a lot of my 20, a lot of people go to college and have these great stories and great 20s.
Mm-hmm.
But I look back and I'm thinking, but you know what? Like I had these dogs and we just had great times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think whatever you're sharing with it too, I think the other thing that comes about that too is being with someone or something, because being alone is very, very hard.
It
It's
is.
difficult.
And if you have the ability to go through a time being alone, I suggest you do it because there's going to be times where you don't have support, or I'm not saying lock yourself in isolation, go crazy,
No.
but you don't need to go out and socialize every Friday night.
Yep, yep. And this is what I also love about what happens in this show all the time is there's always these contradictory mindsets or not mindsets, but thoughts, right? Because we can all agree that we're social people, and we can all agree that it feels good to be with other people, and that
Well, but does it? Because like, yeah, sometimes you haven't seen someone and you can't wait to catch up. But sometimes misery loves company and you're just willing to spend time with anyone else that wants to go to the bar, And that's not worthwhile time spent.
100%. But what I was going to get at too is a lot of times because it just feels good, right? Because it's a misery love company. But it's also absolutely true that humans need to spend time alone because there's a lot of self-discovery that happens there, which is also critical to you being good and groups situations, right? Because it ups your self-esteem, it ups your self-awareness. Like all of these things are important too. And so it's pretty hard to, other than I always say, like, yeah, Hitler was a shitty evil human being. Like, there's some black and white things, but a majority of life is so many levels of gray. And I totally agree with you. Don't force yourself into solitary confinement, but taking long walks, specifically maybe even just traveling on a weekend by yourself to really sit with your thoughts and appreciate things alone is super, super impactful.
And we'll get into the chapter 3, but at one point I was in a bad car accident and I lost the ability to go for long walks and do my deep thoughts or go swimming and have clarity.
Yeah. Now, you don't have to answer this question, and you just say, Mikey, let's move on. But I am interested because you did bring it up and you were like, there was a lot of people close to you that either lost their life or went through traumatic things. If there's somebody that is going through similar things, do you have any like thoughts or advice to them, maybe even coping mechanisms of what you think about that helped get you through? Because you obviously have moved on, started companies, and you're here today on this podcast jamming.
What helped me the most, there's this thing called Project Semicolon. I actually have it tattooed on my hand.
Never heard of it.
And basically, with a period, your sentence is over. But with the semicolon, your story is not over. The story continues.
Oh.
And I thought, I put out a book. My story is not over. And if you actually look on the first page, the book's dedicated to anyone that's ever given up. And then I threw a semicolon in there.
Oh my Lord. Keep going, baby. That's so cool. I mean, we're really peeling back the layers of an onion. Most people wouldn't have that context, I guess, unless they were like deep ingrained into your community. But yeah, dude, I'm looking it up right now, and I actually want to do more research about this, because this is another reason why I started doing what I was doing, because that, I would say that mindset of Project Semicolon, absolutely right. Like unless you're using that period, it's not ever over. You always can learn and grow and evolve. But I think you probably could attest to this. Going through these really tough times in life, it is so helpful, especially from the mental illness side, because it is just very difficult to talk to somebody that's never been through it to describe how it feels or what is happening. Because to a person that hasn't experienced mental illness, it's hard to understand the brain, just not like your brain being sick and not working functionally right. It's always like, the thing that angered me the most was like going online and saying like, it's all about a positive mindset. And I'm like, people, that's not like, this is not the state that I'm in. So part of the thing I want to continue to do is, help people out or be there for people to say, I 100% get you. I know exactly what you're going through because I've been there and I got out the other side.
Yeah. And, the stigma is changing. For a long time, mental health wasn't talked about, or eventually it was, but not so much amongst men, So it's like, I feel like people are now more comfortable speaking about it. And, if I'm willing to talk about things, or, if anyone's listening and wants to reach out, I'll talk, I'll share experience.
Yeah.
I recently had a roommate who lived with me for about 2 years, and he took his own life about 6 months ago.
Wow.
And, I feel bad. I wish we kept in touch. I've gone through this, but sometimes you never know.
Yeah.
I was very caught off guard by this person. And, are there signs? Yes, but it's hard to keep in touch with everyone all the time. So
yeah. And the amount of self-guilt that a lot of people put on themselves too is sometimes like unneeded as well too. And there's just so many emotions that go through it. But dude, thank you for being so incredibly vulnerable and sharing that, because again, I think it could very help people out, someone that listens to this in the future. So I really appreciate it, man.
But one more thing I want to say on that is, let's say you're not going through it, but someone who is.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will naturally reach out and maybe poke fun or say, why would you want to do that? Or almost belittle it by accident.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's probably not the best route. Like, if you have a friend struggling, you could reach out to them, not even mention it, just spend time and listen.
Yeah, dude. I love it. And this is a perfect time to transition. We got people like Zach. Dunks, you're freaking awesome. Do what you always do. This is incredible. Like I said, we're making an impact. This is meaningful conversation, stuff that people need to hear. People, I hate doing this, but I have to do it anyways, because it's like, until I beat people over the head, we love you so much. We want you to be able to retweet and share and get this message out. We still have plenty more lessons to drop and bombs to drop, because we're about to move into episode 3, which is all about Web3. But we've had, and like I said, man, now we have a deep understanding, more than we would ever have by some like short space, or even, a conversation in Discord, obviously. And now that we roll into this kind of next stage of episode 3 and Web3, I just understand you as a human being that much more. And so what you're about to tell us about what you're doing, has just so much more deeper meaning. And that's why we do what we do here, man. So let's hit up episode 3. Take us through this, which obviously is another tough part and moment in your life, and go from there.
Before we dive into it, how's my lighting doing? I know it's getting a little dark
It's
naturally.
getting a little dark, but the shine from your computer
All right, let me know if I need to change anything.
is keeping your face lit up. That's actually perfect.
Okay, cool.
Your money.
So chapter 3, web 3. I guess let's just start around 2020-ish, right? You know, I graduate a couple years before this, but no fun stories. And then 2020 happens, and I was actually in Chicago with a friend just hanging out. And we come back, and like 2 weeks later, the world's shutting down. And I talked to a lot of people in other states, and I realized they had a different experience. But for me in Michigan, for like 30, 35 days, it was literally like lockdown. You only leave your house to go to a grocery store or the bank. I went from like hanging out in Chicago with a buddy to lockdown, no social interaction.
Right.
And, people just weren't social. Businesses weren't open. There was nothing to do. I was just kind of losing it. And then around that time, my dog passed away. And the girl I was dating, who, left me shortly after that, I was a mess. So,
I can't wait. I can't imagine when mine does, man. I freaking love my little dude so much, and he's 6. And I'm like, shit, man, you're getting old.
But, shortly before Cashew had passed away, me and my mom would always kind of just joke about her. I had Icewood and Cashew, and Icewood was like the perfect golden boy, great dog. Cashew is the runt. She had an underbite. Her back legs were a little bit more crooked. She doesn't run as fast, she's just a little bit goofy. She's a little slower, it takes her a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And somehow my mom made this joke about, that's how I am getting a job. I'm just like Cashew,
Yeah.
And it's 2020, so I'm not really having a social life. I'm kind of checking in on my parents, but like they're older and we're not vaccinated yet, or no one knows what's going on. So like we're on the phone FaceTiming. And I just started these doodles in a notebook, and it's like Cashew gets a job as blank, but then she's fired because, and it's like, oh, well, I was a barista, so like why did I lose that job?
Right.
And a lot of these were real jobs. Some of them are just like silly made up things. Like I was never an astronaut in space, but if I was, I bet I'd get lost out there.
Right.
Or like there's a picture of a zookeeper. I wasn't a zookeeper, but my first cousin was, and I just kind of used his story.
Nice. And so the whole concept was, in this moment of like darkness and uncertainty, you started doing these doodles, and Cashew was just like fun, entertaining, right? Or
yeah, it was like my dog died and I can't get a job, and me and my mom are communicating, and this just happens to be a topic we find really funny and go back, and it got us closer. It really strengthened our relationship, which was pretty important to me at that time.
I love it, man. So take me through. You now have got this brainchild of an idea. You don't even know you need to make are you at this moment in time know you're even making a book, or you're just doing doodles and you have an idea?
Jokingly.
Okay.
But next thing you know, I'm like, should I hire an illustrator? And I start like looking into it and interviewing people, and I'm getting samples. And then I don't really know how to write a book. Like I'm just like getting samples from illustrators and writing stuff on PowerPoint and putting the pictures next to it.
Right.
And then I'm like, going back through my kids' collection and looking at books and watching kids shows. And I'm like, we got a positive message. It's like, she gets a job as blank, but she keeps going. And then, I don't want to ruin it for people, but it's like, she tries to get a job as blank, but then something happens. The next page, more jobs, right?
Yeah.
But then you get to the end, and it's like that page turning moment. She's tried all these jobs. It says Cashew is just about ready to give up, but then one day she had a great idea, right? that great idea was she wrote a book.
That's so good, dude.
This is
We're
the
getting
book,
a little
you know.
reading lesson, and yeah, it comes full circle. So, like, what is that time frame from doodle to like I'm creating a book, and then how are you wrapping Web3 in there? I'm interested in this kind of series of events.
So the doodles start in 2020.
Yeah.
The book is published April 1st, 2021. That was the dog's birthday.
Nice.
Not an April Fool's joke.
That's awesome.
And then I think around May 2021, I was a sneakerhead. I wasn't big into crypto, but I followed Jeff Staple on Twitter. And he was posting about a new project he was doing. And I follow him for sneakers. And it was an NFT collab with this company called Artifact.
Yeah.
And they were meta pigeons for $1. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with these? Okay, I'll resell them. So I got a couple of them for $1, not knowing what an NFT was, forgot about them.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I see some hype about this company Artifact. I think I own a few of those, right? I log into this OpenSea platform. I don't know what a floor price is. I don't check anything. I see an offer for $14,000
on a meta pigeon.
I sold it so fast.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand, like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know, I bought it for $1 90 days ago or something.
Right.
So then I'm calling my friends, like, we got to get into this crypto stuff. Like,
right.
I think I just made like 13,999 profit. And he's like, bro, did you check the floor price? Like, someone I talked to like knew a little bit about this. He's like, do you check the floor price? I'm like, no. He's like, go check. Now they're going for 80,000. My heart stops. My heart stops. Because
so
like I was like, oh, I'm a crypto
floor.
god for like 1 second.
Right.
And then I go into this like 48-hour depression.
Right.
But I'm like, you know what? I got to figure this out. I got to see what's going on here. And I used some of that money to fund the Cashew Gets a Job project, to publish the books, to pay the illustrator. So it was money well spent. But flash forward, I actually, was a big Artifact fan. And I went to, I believe it was their Ledger event in Miami, November 2023.
Okay.
And at this point, Cashew's just a book. Like I had written it, and as I'm writing it, I'm like, oh, that would be fun to do an NFT project, like the jobs or the traits, like right. I'm kind of seeing it. But I always think, well, this is, you got to be a wizard to do this, or I'm not a developer. But so I'm in the Artifact community, and I made a bunch of money, and I'm happy, and I got my books. And I go to this event, and I kind of meet them. And I'm like not impressed. There's just, they're nice guys, but the community wasn't very supportive.
Yeah.
And like I'm sharing my work, and no one really is eager to even like share other work, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a big deal, but I left a little disheartened.
Yeah.
And liquidated all my assets, and that moment realized I'm going to make an NFT project. And I'm going to readapt this book into a project, and I'm going to take all the things I liked, and I'm going to leave out all the things I didn't like.
Yeah.
I like that we started off, as you said, this whole thing's an experience. Right. And for me, Artifact was a big experience, and that's something I want to adapt. As well. So it's like, I did a free mint because I got those meta pigeons for $1, and that that really inspired me. $1 is pretty much free. Right. So they played a huge inspiration there.
So there's a little bit about timing, but also the thing that which is interesting, and I would love your reflection here, right? Is it can't all be timing and luck. If you were to rewind when you started writing and drawing these illustrations, and it's kind of a joke, and then you're like, hey, I actually could write a book, and then you lucked out with the meta pigeon stuff in the sense that you never thought they were going to be worth this amount of money, and you actually undercut yourself. What do you think kept on driving you forward, or what are some insights for you as to why you've come so far based off of an idea?
100% community, because I said with Artifact, it was towards the tail end that I was disappointed in the community. Once upon a time, it was a great community.
Right.
But I see all these other. I was doing a lot of traveling to different conventions. You know, A Kid Called Beast. I put out a tweet. I'm at a convention, and all these A Kid Called Beast I've never even met in person are down to meet up and show love and like just certain communities. Everyone wants to hang out and get to know each other. Or like, let's party, let's work, let's just chat, let's meet. You know.
Right.
And I guess I was expecting that from one community I was heavily invested in.
Yeah.
And when I saw that I'm just not impressed with what's going on behind the scenes, I could do this and learn from other communities. And, you know, so many, you know, there's so many positive communities that I've learned from. Lazy Lions, Bedtime, Mars Cat Voyage, A Kid Called Beast. There's just so many projects where it's like, okay, I'm going to try and incorporate something you guys did, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And what is it about community to you? And it comes in many facets, but is it the fact of the sense of belonging, the sharing of information, a combination of a bunch of things, but your particular insight on community and what it means to you?
Well, so it's kind of like finding your tribe. And before NFTs, I was big into sneakers, and we were in what you call cook groups.
Right.
And that's kind of reseller focused, where it's like, you know, pirates selling each other secrets to make money, you know?
Yeah.
But then I was doing the sneaker podcast where we're creating content for sneakerheads.
Yeah.
And then I've kind of like put myself in a situation where resellers don't want to hear my sneaker content and sneakerheads don't want to hear my reseller content, right?
Yeah.
So with NFTs, I feel like I found this perfect vibe where it doesn't matter what you're doing. We just all relate over art community utility. And it's like, we could share sneaker news, car news, or you could not have any of those interests. And, you know, we'll just still say good morning and share art or other projects. It's like something about Web3 or the tech or just being ahead or trying something new or being on the innovation line, I feel like.
Yeah. But there's something unique in the sense that still there's differences between communities. So is it ultimately what your brand stands for that is the unification of it all? Because like you said, in your community in particular, many different verticals are shared, but there's some commonality. Is it as simple as your picture of Cashew or what Cashew means to them or means to you?
I would hope it's what it means to them, and that it's believing in the underdog or believing in yourself. You know, I feel like everyone loves a good underdog story. And with Cashew, it's whether you relate to the underdog story or you just need that reminder to keep going and never give up.
Right. I love it, man. This is and what I told you too, like 75% of the content is about you, and you've done an amazing job just sharing insights and fantastic stories. The Cashew thing makes so much more sense. We have been talking for almost an hour and a half, believe it or not. And I want to start kind of getting towards the end in the sense that we've gotten a timeline of Cashew. Talk to me about the mint, that like leading up to the mint. What was your thought process behind the mint? Was it more of a fundraising event or was it more of a community event? Where you are now and where you want to go in the future? And then I have one last question. Super softball. Don't be nervous. I'll give you my closing comments and then we'll call it a day.
Perfect. Well, so November 2023, the thought hits me. Cashew needs to be a project. And then I'm trying to, you know, I was an Ethereum maxi. Everything I did was on Ethereum. I loved Ethereum. And then you have all these L2s coming out. And I'm, you know, there's pros and cons to everything. I don't want to get into it on this space.
Right.
But for some reason, Ethereum didn't feel like it might be the best solution, because with Cashew, I was onboarding a lot of new people to crypto. Not only that, once we announced Solana, I don't have a ton of support from the Solana ecosystem. A lot of people who minted are Ethereum friends who said, this is my first time minting on Solana. And that's a great feeling. But originally I chose Solana to help onboard people who had no experience, just for the cheaper gas and faster transactions. But anyways, I went to NFT Paris. You know, we started the Discord, started the marketing, sharing content, and I went to NFT Paris. And I wasn't a speaker; I was just there, you know, like an attendee. But you know, I'm backpacking it and giving books away and introducing myself and telling everyone Cashew Gets a Job is going to be a project. And while I was there, just, you know, I met a few companies, a few different chains, a few different meetings, and it just hit me. Solana's the underdog right now. Cashew's the underdog. I'm in Paris. I feel at peace. It was, aha, this is happening.
I love it.
So I think that was February 2024 that we announced we'll be dropping on Solana. And I was thinking I was going to do around 3,000 and I was going to charge. But, you know, the more I get into this project just keeps me going. It keeps me alive. Like if I'm having a bad day, I work on Cashew. I'm thinking, you know, the market conditions are rough, and I'll wait because I'm locked and loaded around February. But I'll wait. I'm thinking, you know, it's just not about the money.
Yeah.
And I've already paid for all this. Like I made a roadmap, but maybe I did it wrong. You know, usually you have a mint, you hype it up, and then you use the funds to do your roadmap.
Right.
Well, I kind of did everything backwards. You know, I had already cut a deal with Mr. Cat, which, you know, miracle blessing from God to even be able to work with him.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I didn't have his name to put on as a 3D person, I don't know if we would have minted out.
Yeah.
But I already had all these books, and actually another blessing, one of my manufacturers in China, they printed a few hundred books without the barcode. So they're like, we're going to destroy these. I'm like, just send them to me. I'll pay shipping. It could be a free giveaway for holders.
That's amazing.
You know, so I was able to do things that were, you know, extremely expensive. Maybe this was luck, you know?
Yeah.
But so I'm stressed about when to mint. And then once you realize you don't care about money,
yeah,
who cares?
Yeah.
Because you don't have to have it in the hypest market. If anything, maybe a bad market, they'll be more likely to click something free.
Yeah.
So then I was worried about, you know, every trait's hand drawn. We have over 90 traits, just jobs, 20 color furs. We have a lot, but I didn't want to, you know, some collections you see too many similarities. And I thought, you know, we're a kid's book. We have games on Tiny Tap. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 would be a fun number.
Yeah. I
So,
like it.
so we did 1, 2, 3, 4 for free. We minted out in just over 24 hours. But whitelist was painfully slow. And I was extremely nervous. And I learned a lot of lessons about being your own collaboration manager. I want to shout out collab managers who don't get enough credit.
Oh my God, dude. So much work.
And, you know, I get it now. And I'm very lucky that public sale things picked up.
Yep.
And that was December 27th. We've had healthy volume sales since. I think we're at a market cap of around 15,000. We have around 300 little more holders right now. It's pretty healthy motion. I'm extremely happy with it. We're on Magic Eden, Soul Sniper, Tensor.
Dude, that's so cool, man.
You know, you go to our website and you log in with the wallet, you could claim a free physical book and download your free 3D files.
Yeah. And I think, again, it just comes back to this, like, there's a bigger meaning for what you're doing. You turn something really bad into something good. But again, like the money wasn't the big driver, and you continue to roll with it, and you've tried to be like, dude, I have had massive communities on this show, right? And the amount of like heartfelt like messages when I announced you were coming on was awesome, right? And you have a way smaller community than a lot of these people. And that, man, that's the secret sauce, is the people that have meaning and thought behind the comments of what they say. And it's not like hyped, fire emoji, all of the things that you see. People are actually writing meaningful comments. And I think that is the big difference. And I got it from your story, and I got why you're building the way you're building. And I think I just wish it was, but maybe not. Maybe I don't wish that these types of efforts were more monetizable, because I think there's a reason,
you know,
that they're not. That's an interesting thought. I don't even know how to respond to that.
You know, the last few months, we've delivered and shipped a lot of things. I mean, we did physical real world asset claim within months. The 3D, we've delivered things very fast. And I've caught the attention of some investors. And I have options right now, but if it doesn't align with what I want to do, I'm looking into other, like, I'd rather take out a line of credit on my house than take someone's money and have to kind of do what they want. Unless
100%.
But I've turned down big investment opportunities because I didn't want to do a token.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree. And these are the types of things. And this is my contribution to the space, right? Like, I'm not going to force what I think you should be doing down your throat. I'm going to have a real honest conversation with you. And now everybody that hears this and that will hear this, they can make the decision. And I think they would be crazy not to look into what you're doing because of the way that you presented yourself. And that's like my version of giving back to the space and helping the community out. Let's do this, man. Amazing conversation. I knew this podcast was going to be great because of our intro call. Next 3 to 6 months, I'll ask my last question and we'll wind it down.
Next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, what does that look like for you? Anything you want to share? What are you continuing to work on?
Well,
how are you trying to grow?
Now it's pretty much me and Cashew are intertwined, right? So Cashew's the focus over everything. And I've made it into a full-time job. And I guess the focus right now would be staking and raffles. Mm-hmm. Now, I've already built a staking system, but, as a founder, am I happy? Sure. As a community member, is it awesome? It's pretty good, but I don't think it's awesome, right? Mm-hmm. So I gotta make it a little bit better. And then I want to get the raffle system out. And it's just a little delay because I want to do an off-chain system for points.
Yeah, I love it, man. Yeah, you should. Like I said, you got to talk to my co-founder, man. He's brilliant when it comes to strategy and product marketing stuff. So I think you'd have a super fruitful conversation.
But yeah, the next few months, that's my first focus. Then we're going to have a small run of physical collectibles, just, 3D printed Cashew toys. Mm-hmm. I will be speaking at NFT New York in June about community and community building.
Nice.
And I might drop, some announcements there. And, just continuing to build with the community. And, one thing we want to do is we don't want to build products and sell them to holders. Mm-hmm. We want to build products with holders and sell it to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So we're going to be kind of taking initiative to empower the community, or whether they want to just, run with their own thing or work with us on things, or kind of get, trait groups together so they can work on different products.
Yeah. I love it, man. And I appreciate the insights. So we are coming to an end. I have one last question. I will give you my final thoughts and we'll call it a good Friday and you can go game out. I would love to join this game.
Oh, if I can. Our featured quest goes live at in just under an hour at 8 p.m. If you go to Nifty Island Quest, it's featured with Cashew Gets a Job, Mars Cat Voyage, Lazy Lions, and Mr. Cat.
I wish I could join that because I want to do that, but I have to watch my kid. And I'm already late. I'm gonna get
I will say it's 72 hours.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll pop in later on tonight, probably then.
Tons of prizes there. And if you want to do, anyone listening, if you want to do a comment or a retweet or something, we could give away a Cashew right now as well.
Oh boy. No, this is what we're gonna do. When I do give away stuff, I will, let's say in an hour or two from now, when I got a moment to breathe, I'm not watching the kid, I will tweet a trivia question about this interview, which would require somebody to actually be paying attention. And we have over 100 people watching us now. So I do know there are people watching us. And the first person to answer that right will get a Cashew. So I appreciate that offer. And that's what we'll do. And then if they get the Cashew, they can join the event as well because they'll have a Cashew.
Anyone can participate in the quest, but if you own a Cashew, you could play as the Cashew avatar.
Boom. Now you're playing the quest as the Cashew avatar. Love it. And we'll send me the details and I'll retweet that or I'll send a note out tonight about the event as well too through my accounts to give you some more exposure.
Perfect.
So this is it, man. Amazing conversation. Last question. You have either run many spaces yourself, been a part of thousands of spaces. I don't know if you've been on a podcast before. How did your experience on the Mikey G and Web3 podcast go today compared to the other things you see in Web3?
Absolutely phenomenal. I was nervous a little bit about lighting. As you can see, it's even darkened throughout.
No, you dude, you're all
But no,
right,
you kept me comfortable. You prep me. You communicate beforehand. And actually, I was on the Sneaker Bar Detroit podcast for many years talking about sneakers.
Yeah.
And I would try and it's a sneaker podcast, but I once tried to promote Cashew or my own project, and they cut my mic. So it's just such a different vibe to like be welcome to talk about what I want to talk about and to have people give a shit.
Yeah. Thank you, man. The feedback. And I'm batting 100%, man. Product market fit with the founders I do have. Now I just got to get the audience of Web3 to give it more shit about deep, meaningful conversations. What you said gives me chills because that's what I'm going for. I want this to be meaningful. I want this to be one of the best experiences you have. You just gave me that feedback. But I will say the only reason it can be that great is because you were humble. You were human yourself, and you showed vulnerabilities. You gave us amazing insights, and you opened up, man. And I can't bring that content without you doing that. So thank you. And the lighting is not bad. It's actually perfect. I actually love this lighting. You'll see a lot of gamers do this. They'll specifically have a dark background because it lights up your face. And we already talked about how incredible your face is. So everything's working right now from a lighting perspective. My final comments are this, man.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
If I could just give one last comment, it would be, like we talked about mental health. If you're on the edge about something or you're considering it, if you don't want to call a therapist, ask ChatGPT about mental health. Give it a go,
I think it's great.
And
Astro loved this space. I'll call it a podcast, but we can call it a space, whatever you want. You said something else?
Oh, the only other thing would be if someone is, whether you're an entrepreneur or a failed entrepreneur, or let's say you have a business idea and you just keep talking yourself out of it, give it a go. Like, let this inspire you. Let this be that push. Let this be that sign, because you are not getting any younger and you're going to regret. Like, even if I don't make it, I'm going to sleep well knowing I tried. And maybe I inspired someone along the way, but I'm not going to be able to live knowing I never tried to do what I wanted.
100%, man. And that is your way of saying what I think the best slogan that ever existed from a brand was from Nike, which is just do it. I mean, you cannot get a better of a slogan. And it comes down to that a lot. Is just, guys, give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? It won't work, right? My closing comments, man. One, I knew this was going to be a good conversation. Two, I really mean this is the beginning of a friendship. I want to help, especially for people like you that are trying to do the right thing in the right way. I love community. I wish I could spend all my time in the communities of people like you that I love. I just don't have the time, but I'm honored to be a part of your community. And I want to be able to help in creative ways in the future to progress your brand. And you've got me for life, brother. The things that
means the world to me.
Absolutely, man. And the things that stick out to me was, one, like we said in the beginning, you even mentioned it. I could tell you were a little nervous, but it doesn't matter because it did not take long for you to, I could see it, like the shoulders rolling back a little bit. And you're like, all right, I feel Mikey's vibe. And you just shared, like I said, intimate details about mental health, struggles, entrepreneurship, is school the right thing? Creativity. We had a great conversation. All of these really, really important themes that people should be talking about, but you did it from your point of view, from someone that went to MSU, that was in Michigan, that someone is deeply going to resonate with. So thank you for being so vulnerable and being so open. And finally, it gave me time, man. You're a busy human being. You gave me time for us to really grow that friendship live online. We had people chiming in about how much they loved it, and that means they loved you. And you got a chance to start connecting with your audience in a new way. And I hope you just continue that narrative, and I'm here to help you do that. So thank you for everything, man. Have fun gaming. I'll try to hit it up sometime over the next 72 hours. And this is just the beginning, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you, the platform, the listeners. And I agree. It's just the beginning, or, you know, this is just one of many chapters to come. And it's a community project. So yeah, we're in this together. And, you know, I'm very easy to get a hold of, to reach. I want you guys to know me. And that's why I'm doing this.
And we do know you a lot deeper now. And with that being said, happy Friday, everybody. Mikey G and Dunks are out.
See ya.